The silver watch lay untouched in its elegant box on my father's gift table, its inscription hidden beneath custom wrapping. To new beginnings, love Vanessa. 3 hours into his retirement party, he still hadn't opened it. I stood at the edge of the garden, champagne glass in hand, watching relatives who had ignored me for years suddenly orbiting around me like planets discovering a new sun. The red Jaguar type I'd parked prominently in the driveway had done its job, announcing my arrival as someone worth noticing. CEO of a $90 million company. The daughter they never thought would amount to anything. Vanessa. My brother Logan approached, his confident smile not quite reaching his eyes. Quite an entrance, sis. Nice car. Thanks, I replied, the champagne tasting suddenly bitter on my tongue. Business must be treating you well too. Mom mentioned a promotion to vice president. Congratulations. How strange that we could stand here making pleasant conversation, as if he hadn't witnessed every dismissal, every useless girl comment our father had thrown my way since childhood. As if he hadn't benefited from every comparison. My father caught my eye from across the lawn, his expression unreadable. 31 years of seeking approval from those stern eyes, and today was the first time I'd seen something new there. Uncertainty. The breaking point. You were never the bright one, my father had said 3 months earlier, his voice carrying across the living room where my relatives sat sipping their drinks and pretending not to hear. I stood frozen, the regional business competition award certificate clutched in my hand. The familiar sting of his dismissal hit me like it always did, a paper cut that never quite healed, reopened over and over. But this time, something different followed. Anger, rising hot and unstoppable. I excused myself to the kitchen, leaned against the counter, and took deep breaths. My phone buzzed with a text from my business partner Eliza. Did you tell them about the investor meeting? I typed back, not yet. Timing's not right. What I didn't say was that the timing would never be right in this house. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see my father clapping my brother on the shoulder, a gesture I couldn't remember ever receiving. The family portrait was perfect without me in it. Robert Graves, retired engineer and self-proclaimed business expert. His golden son Logan, corporate success story. My silent, appeasing mother, and various relatives nodding in admiration at whatever story my brother was telling. I straightened my shoulders and returned to the living room with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Little did they know that their dismissal was fueling something inside me, something that would soon force them all to see me very differently. The company, NeuroSync, had started as nothing more than an idea sketched on napkins during my lunch breaks at my previous corporate job. Now we occupied half a floor in a renovated warehouse on the edge of downtown Columbus with 15 employees and technology that was beginning to make waves in the predictive analytics field. That bad, huh? Eliza asked the next morning, sliding a coffee across her desk toward me. She could read my family dinners on my face by now. Same story, different day, I replied, taking the cup gratefully. Logan secured some contract with the state government, and you'd think he'd single-handedly solved world hunger. And meanwhile, we're just over here revolutionizing how businesses understand consumer behavior. Nothing important. Eliza rolled her eyes. I smiled despite myself. This was why we worked so well together. She understood both the technology and the weight of constant underestimation. The investor meeting is confirmed for Thursday, she continued. Westlake Ventures wants to see the new algorithm in action. When it goes well, I corrected her automatic if. We'll have the capital to scale up and take on Horizon Data directly. Horizon Data, our main competitor, larger and more established. The same company that had rejected my job application 4 years ago with a suggestion that I look into something less technical. Their rejection letter still sat in my desk drawer, a constant reminder. The past, my father's dismissive words had roots going back to my childhood. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, in the shadow of my brother had been an exercise in invisibility. Logan was the golden child, his academic achievements, athletic trophies, and later his business ventures celebrated with enthusiasm and pride. My accomplishments were brushed aside like crumbs from a dinner table. I remember coming home excited about being selected for an exclusive tech internship, only to have my father wave it off and ask when I was going to find a real career path. When I made the dean's list studying computer science, My mother merely noted that it must be getting easier these days. My father came from a generation and background where he'd worked his way up through sheer force of will. The son of a factory worker, he'd earned his engineering degree at night while working days, married my mother when they were both 22, and never looked back. Success to him looked like Logan, corporate, predictable, respectable. Not like me, the dreamer with impractical ideas and emotions that showed too easily. I had learned to stop sharing with them, to keep my dreams and achievements tucked away where they couldn't be diminished. But some childish part of me had never stopped hoping for that nod of approval, that moment of pride in their eyes. The pitch. The conference room at Westlake Ventures felt too warm despite the sleek air conditioning units humming quietly overhead. I adjusted my blazer and glanced at Eliza, who gave me a subtle nod. We had practiced this presentation a dozen times, but the stakes had never been higher. As you can see from our projections, I continued, gesturing to the screen behind me. NeuroSync's algorithm has consistently outperformed market standards by 27%. What this means for retail implementation is an unprecedented level of customer behavior prediction. Gregory Westlake, the silver-haired founder of the venture capital firm, leaned forward slightly. And your competitors? How does Horizon Data's new platform compare? I had anticipated this question. Horizon's approach relies on historical data sets. Our algorithm incorporates real-time emotional response indicators. Simply put, they can tell you what customers did yesterday. We can tell you what they'll do tomorrow. The room shifted. I could feel the energy change as the investors exchanged glances. This was the moment, the tipping point I had been working toward for years. For 3 years, I had lived in a tiny apartment, eating ramen noodles and pouring every dollar back into NeuroSync. I worked 18-hour days, read every business book I could find, and learned from every mistake, all while hearing my father's voice in my head. Useless girl. You were never the bright one. 2 hours later, Eliza and I stood in the lobby, still in shock. Westlake had not only agreed to invest, they wanted to lead a funding round that would value NeuroSync at $90 million. The deal would transform our company overnight and position us as the industry leader in consumer predictive technology. We did it, Eliza whispered, her usual composure cracking as a grin spread across her face. Vanessa, we actually did it. I nodded, a strange numbness replacing the adrenaline that had carried me through the meeting. Success felt different than I'd imagined, less like a triumphant shout and more like a quiet certainty settling into my bones. My phone rang, interrupting my mental list-making. It was my mother. For a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail, but some old habit made me answer. Hello, Vanessa. Don't forget your father's retirement party is next Sunday. The whole family will be there, and it would look strange if you weren't. You know how people talk. The contrast was so stark it was almost comical. In one moment, I was negotiating a multi-million-dollar deal that would change the face of an industry. In the next, I was being asked to remember a family obligation where, once again, I would be peripheral. Actually, Mom, I might have some news of my own to share by then. That's nice, dear. Just remember your father doesn't like anything too sweet. The doctor says his blood sugar. As she continued, I caught Eliza's eye. She raised an eyebrow questioningly, and I just shook my head slightly. Some things never changed. But I was about to. The headlines. Thursday morning, I was reviewing the final investment documents when Eliza burst into my office, her typically composed demeanor replaced by barely contained excitement. Have you seen it? She demanded, thrusting her tablet toward me. I looked up, bleary-eyed from poring over legal language. Seen what? Forbes, Business Insider, The Wall Street Journal. They're all running the story. I took the tablet, and there it was, my face staring back at me from the Forbes website. The headline read, Disruptor Alert. Vanessa Graves named youngest female CEO in tech after landmark investment deal. My stomach dropped. The announcement wasn't supposed to go public until next week, after all the paperwork was finalized, and after I'd had a chance to tell my family in person. I quickly scanned the article, which detailed the investment deal and highlighted my journey from startup founder to CEO of what was now being called the most exciting tech firm in the Midwest. Everyone would see it, including my family. As if summoned by my thought, My phone began to vibrate with incoming messages. Colleagues, old classmates, distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all suddenly aware of my success. But nothing from my parents or Logan. The silence from them was deafening. "This is huge," Eliza said, reclaiming her tablet. "We should celebrate." I nodded absently, still processing the implications. "We will, but first I need to make a call." After Liza left, I dialed my parents' number, expecting my mother's usual cheerful greeting. Instead, my father answered, his voice clipped. "Graves Residence." "Dad, it's me. I I suppose you think we'd be impressed," he interrupted, making a spectacle in the business pages. I blinked, taken aback. That wasn't intentional. The announcement went out early. "Logan's been working for years to build a respectable career, step by step. But you always needed to make a show of things, didn't you?" The familiar sting of his dismissal hit, but this time the anger that followed wasn't hot. It was cold and clarifying. I gripped the phone tighter. "A show? Dad, I built this company from nothing. No connections, no family support, not even a word of encouragement. And now you've got your name in some articles. Congratulations. We'll see how long it lasts before reality sets in." The reality is that I'm now the CEO of a $90 million company that's changing the industry. That's not just some articles. "Listen to me," he said, his voice lowering to that tone he used when he thought he was imparting wisdom. "This tech bubble you're riding will burst. It always does. Logan's built something solid, something real." I closed my eyes, suddenly tired of the same old narrative. "Dad, I have to go. I'll see you at the retirement party on Sunday." "Vanessa," he started, but I had already hung up. I sat in silence for a moment, then reached for my laptop. If my family couldn't see my worth, perhaps it was time to show them in a way they couldn't ignore. The car. That Saturday, I walked into the Jaguar dealership in downtown Columbus. The salesman approached with a practiced smile that faltered slightly when I pointed to the F-Type in gleaming red on the showroom floor. "That one," I said simply. "Excellent choice," he recovered smoothly. "Would you like to see some of our more practical options as well? The sedan, perhaps?" I met his eyes directly. "I'm interested in the F-Type, the V8. 2 hours later, I drove off the lot in my new car, the engine purring with a power that seemed to vibrate through my bones. It was extravagant, impractical, and exactly what I wanted. Not because I needed it, but because for once in my life, I could choose something purely because it brought me joy. As I navigated through traffic, I thought about my father's retirement party tomorrow. The car was a statement, yes, but not the childish one my father would assume. It wasn't, "Look at me." It was, "I am here. I have always been here. You just refuse to see me." The party Sunday arrived, warm and clear, a perfect early summer day for an outdoor retirement celebration. I sat in my car outside my parents' suburban home, watching guests arrive. Relatives, my father's former colleagues, neighbors, and family friends, all people who had witnessed my relegation to the background over the years. With a deep breath, I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusted my designer sunglasses, and stepped out of the Jaguar. The sleek vehicle, with its gleaming red exterior and purring engine, was not subtle, nor was it meant to be. As I retrieved the small, elegantly wrapped package from the passenger's seat, I felt eyes turning in my direction. Cousin Drew, always the first to notice anything automotive, stopped mid-conversation, his mouth slightly open. "Is that Vanessa?" I smiled and handed him the keys. "Mind parking it for me? The driveway is getting crowded." His eyes widened as he took the keys, treating them like precious artifacts. "This is the V8, right?" The sound is unmistakable. "Goodyear," I replied, enjoying the way the small crowd by the garage had turned to stare. "Just be careful with the trim. It's custom." I made my way toward the backyard, where tables had been set up on the lawn. My mother spotted me first, her greeting freezing on her lips as she took in my appearance. Gone was the practical, understated daughter they were used to. Today, I wore a tailored cream suit with a bold blue silk blouse, designer heels, and jewelry that quietly spoke of success. "Vanessa," she managed finally. You look different. Thank you, I said, kissing her cheek. Where's Dad? I brought him something. She gestured toward the grill, where my father stood in his element, surrounded by male relatives and friends hanging on his every grilling tip. I approached the group, conscious of the conversation dying down as I neared. Dad, I said, extending the small package. Happy retirement. He turned, his expression unreadable as he took in my transformation. For a moment, I thought he might make a scene or dismiss me again. Instead, he accepted the gift with a nod. You didn't need to bring anything, he said stiffly. I wanted to, I replied, maintaining eye contact. After all, it's not every day my father retires after 30 years. The men around us watched this exchange with interest, several of them clearly having read the recent articles about me. I could see recognition in their eyes, followed by confusion as they observed the cool interaction between us. Well, my father said, making no move to open the gift. I should get back to these steaks before they burn. Of course, I said, smiling politely. We wouldn't want that. As I turned to walk away, I heard one of his friends say, Bob, isn't that your daughter who's been in the news? The CO? I didn't stay to hear his response. The present. Now, hours into the party, I watched as the dynamics had shifted palpably. Relatives who had previously gravitated toward Logan now sought me out, asking about NeuroSync, about what it was like to be featured in Forbes, about my secrets to success. I answered graciously, but with a professional distance that was new to our family gatherings. My father remained by the grill, his domain, watching this transformation of his usually overlooked daughter with an expression I couldn't quite read. He had still not opened my gift. Eventually, as dessert was being served, my father tapped his glass for attention. The backyard quieted as everyone turned toward him, expecting the retirement speech he had likely been planning for months. Thank you all for coming today, he began, his voice carrying across the yard. Ending a 30-year career is a milestone worth marking, and having you all here means the world to me and Joyce. He continued with anecdotes from his years as an engineer, thanked colleagues who had become friends, and then turned to family acknowledgments. And of course, I'm proud of my children, Logan, who's making his mark at Hamilton Financial, recently promoted to vice president. A polite round of applause followed, Logan nodding appreciatively. And Vanessa, my father continued, his voice faltering slightly as every eye turned to me, who apparently has been quietly building something none of us fully understood. The yard was silent now, the tension palpable. I met my father's gaze steadily, waiting. I always said she was the emotional one, he added with a small laugh that few joined. It seems I may have underestimated how far that emotional intelligence could take her. It wasn't an apology, not even close. But it was the first public acknowledgement from my father that he might have been wrong about me. As the gathered family and friends raised their glasses, I saw something new in many of their eyes. Respect. The understanding. As the night progressed, I found a moment alone with my father. He stood at the edge of the yard, nursing a whiskey and gazing at the garden my mother had spent years perfecting. You haven't opened your gift, I said, nodding toward the small package still sitting unopened on the gift table. He looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. I wanted to wait until it was quieter. I nodded, accepting this explanation, though I suspected he simply hadn't wanted to open it in front of everyone after our earlier exchange. So, he said finally, CO? Yes. Of a $90 million company? Yes. And the youngest woman to do it, according to those articles? That's what they say. A long pause followed, filled with decades of misunderstanding and dismissal. I don't understand it, he admitted. This tech stuff. In my day, business was straightforward. Products you could hold, services you could see. I considered explaining how our algorithm worked, how it was revolutionizing an entire industry, but realized it wouldn't matter. This wasn't about understanding my business. It was about him finally seeing me. You don't need to understand the technology, Dad. Just understand that I built something valuable, something lasting. He nodded slowly, then gestured toward the front of the house. That car. That's quite a statement. I smiled. It wasn't meant to be a statement. It was meant to be a reward for years of hard work. Still, he said, his voice lower now. Pulling up like that after all those articles. You knew what you were doing. Yes, I admitted. I did. In his eyes, I could see a complex mix of pride and regret. The watch I had given him, a custom engraved piece bearing the inscription, "To New Beginnings, Love Vanessa," would remain unopened until later. But something had already begun to shift between us, a tiny crack in the wall of his certainty about who I was and what I could achieve. I didn't need his approval anymore. I was Vanessa Graves, CO, visionary, and architect of my own success. But some small part of me, that little girl who had craved her father's nod of approval, felt a quiet satisfaction in the knowledge that he was finally beginning to see me as I truly was. Never useless, always bright, and finally, undeniably successful on my own terms.